The way I entered into art making was through photography, and I feel like that has always been a medium that I'm like really compelled towards, and also like deeply frustrated by, both of those things. And so I love like this power to like wield truth, or kind of like be a document that has a certain kind of indexicality to it. But I also like resist that and like want to like make stories or narratives or somehow kind of like have a physical expression onto the photo paper or into that medium in some way that can reflect my like feminist or embodied or queer or like being like something like outside of the kind of like two-dimensional, decisive moment of like Bresson or something like that. There's something similar to Dani in the sense of like all of the things that are of the life kind of get like cycled into or sort of pulled into the making of the work and influence it in very direct ways. And it is a way of like processing or transforming that experience into something else that I think ultimately like you want to share with others.
And we always take on topics of the current. At one point I was grappling with my Jewish identity. Currently, I'm reckoning with, my place in this family and where I have patterns of flight. I don't really do fight, it's flight. So I have these desires to just split, can't do it. And what does it mean to stay? And what does it mean to have, I'm in love with these kids, but what happens when you don't want to be around someone? And how they need you to be there. And so I'm making drawings of the girls. I often use photographs. I'm not trained in drawing. I don't know how to do an anatomically correct figure or face. And I don't really care, but sometimes I want Sky's face, Rose's face, Sheila's face, my father's face. So I will take a photo and put it in as a collage.
We started working collaboratively in like 2015 or something like that, and that's like kind of an interesting way into the collaboration because
it started on paper and it started with language.
Yeah. And I was like asking Dani to print me a phrase that was like strangely ordinary, this devotion, and I just wanted a whole bunch of them printed, like a whole bunch, like the kind of like repetition of that phrase, but also the offering of that surface as like a place to like make a note or put a drawing or mark time or create a document, I guess. And but Dani, like while you were helping me, like had this idea of like what that phrase meant
to you and to me. I was started to question strangely ordinary this devotion. Now what I thought it meant is that her devotion to Rose. I thought it was about her devotion. And to me, to be devoted to a child was not ordinary. I found it extraordinary. So that was like, I started asking myself, what am I devoted to? Doesn't really matter. We started working with that. That became the title of our first film in our trilogy. Strangely Ordinary, This Devotion, Come Coyote, Future from Inside.
Like
and the whole umbrella of the trilogy is feral domestic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like
using the domestic space as like something that can be kind of turned wild or like, or
as
like
much as possible because we have to go get our car fixed or whatnot. But what could we introduce to the family that keeps us from getting too domesticated?
Right, or like just like sees it as a place of potential. Because I feel like the domestic kind of gets like sort of overlooked, it's sort of a foreclosed space in some ways. So like and we were a little bit trapped in it in the beginning, like because Rose was so young, like we would have to have a babysitter. So like there's like a whole bunch of like scenes that are because this is the space that we're in.
Like we're gonna use the alley, we gotta use the kitchen, we're gonna shoot in the backyard because we can't go out.
Yeah, just like certain realities.
So things fall into place like that. Like the movies. It's like everything makes each other. It kind of tracked time with Rose being I met her when she was 5. She's 15 now, but, oh yeah, and because she's 15 now, we're trying to deal with teenage girl in this society, in our social media mess. So that's what Stovepipe to the Sun addresses.
In relation to what Dani's saying, like, I do believe that, like, we are, like, it's sort of like patriarchy or whatever. We're inundated with a certain kind of message and a certain way of telling it. Most of the movies that we watch, that we would watch at the theater, have like a very clear sort of like narrative arc, you know, like rising action, climax, denouement, you know, like we get it, you know what I mean? And it's fun. It's like we love to escape into these other worlds that are provided, but I feel like part of what you can offer, like in art making, is like other ways, you know, like, so like, what does it mean to make a fragmented narrative? What does it mean to have to construct sense yourself as the viewer, or like not be totally sure, you know what I mean? And I think that those are all like really productive questions, and it's like, it's offering story, which is like what you crave and like what we're both like invested in, but like in a way that is like not, you know, so legible, you know.
And you're gonna have to work. We're not going to put it on a silver platter. I often will make a voiceover, for instance, because I want you to understand, and then you don't have to think. So that one gets scratched. You know what I mean?
I think part of what makes working together so interesting is that, like, I have one idea about something and like she has something totally different, you know? So there's, again, like, it's that sort of, there's like a productive dissonance of like, you're dealing with something that is not yourself, you know, and there's like just that energy coming in can like shift things in a way. And that's what I love about Dani's way of making work and her way in the world, which is like, she's very like unafraid. And we fight about this because like Dani has like a directness and I have like a kind of like obscurity, or like I'm interested in like how things can accumulate and reveal something, like, and even in writing the dreams, like I'm like rewriting them one on top of the other, one on top of the other, and Dani's like, why don't you just like write them out, you know, like, and like these are good questions, but like but it's also like that's part of the way in which I make sense of the world. It's okay with me if it takes a while, you know, to like, or if you have to like think about it as a formal experience and then like it seeps into you like a word or a shape or something else.
There was a lot of doubt for many years about being an artist. Like, I'm in here having the time of my life, and there's people that couldn't have this. What business am I? I should be working on behalf of others. You know, I'm not contributing. And then I came to understand through other people's art that art feeds me. And I thought, I'm not as self-indulgent as I'm afraid I'm being. I'm trying to make work that is true to myself and something larger than myself. And that when the work is personal, I'm concerned with form to make sure it's larger than myself, because it is larger. Like, we are of one another. I'm not going to make my art and say, we're all universal. Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but what I'm going to do is make it formally complex in order to make sure it's not about navel gazing. And that is a formal thing. And I'm very committed to what is form, what is content, and how can we weave them. I got a lot of content that I don't know how to make formally. Collaboration actually is a way to expand out from my understandings.